Dr. Harshal Rajekar.
Thank you so much. On behalf of Dignity Foundation, we wholeheartedly welcome Dr. Harshal Rajekar to today's R&D session. We also welcome all our dignitarians from all chapters across the country. Dr. Rajekar is an expert on treatment of liver, pancreatic diseases, and liver transplant surgery. In technical terms, he is a hepatobiliary, GI, and transplant surgeon. Trained in transplant and HPB surgery in Singapore, New Zealand, and New York. He was instrumental in setting up the liver transplant program at PGMI Chandigarh, and in Pune, he set up the liver transplant program at Ruby Hall. And you'll be glad to know that he is the first one to conduct a liver transplant surgery by Dr. Rajekar. He was the first one. Today, he speaks on, as we have mentioned, how to maintain liver health and to need for supplements. In fact, in case of liver, if something goes wrong with our liver, we hardly come to know about it till it's very late. So I'll request Dr. Rajekar to explain to us as to what are the symptoms we have in case if there's some problem with the liver. Right now, he's attached with the Columbia Asia and in Ahmedabad Hospital. May I request Dr. Rajekar to please take over now. Thank you so much.
Yeah, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. It gives me immense pleasure to see everybody socializing and meeting each other and exchanging ideas and things like that. And it's always a pleasure to come and to even talk to Mr. Asthana and to see Dignity Foundation. I always like this idea, and that's how you socially interact with each other, help each other, and things like that. And this is the good thing about. And when you share health issues and talk about health issues, you increase awareness, and as you know, knowledge percolates from top to bottom, and then everyone gets to know about these things. So I'm very happy to tell you to help you with all of this. So what we're going to talk about today is what I'm going to tell you about is I'm going to start sharing my screen. Can everybody see?
Yes.
Right. So just a minute, I'll shift to full screen. Yeah, so that's better. So how to keep the liver is the vital, we can say one of the vital organs of the body, not one of the vitals, I would probably say it is the most vital organ of the body. We know the heart, we know the brain. So if the heart stops, the person will die. If the brain stops, the person will die. But if it is the liver that is instrumental in keeping the heart and the brain and all the organs functioning. The liver has approximately something like 800 odd different functions that we know about, and there may be a lot more functions that we don't know about. So how to keep this healthy, how to look after your liver, and is there any need for any supplements? So, the liver is a major fat burning organ as well as a fat synthesizing organ. It is the largest and probably the hardest working organ in the body. So it is the energy producer, it consumes the energy, it absorbs the nutrients, and so it assimilates the nutrients that come from the intestine and makes it into building blocks and supplies it to the body, which helps the body in using these for further functions. So, and in addition to that, it is the filter. So there are two different functions. There are two classes of function. One is synthetic. Synthetic means making things or synthesizing things, and the other is excretory. Excretory meaning to remove the bad things, so filtering the bad things. So it filters the bad things and makes the good things. This is the magnified picture of the inside of the liver. So generally, you can see the step ladder pattern, these black holes with things. So these are the cells, and these hollow things inside is the sinusoid. The sinusoids are the ends of the blood vessels, so very tiny. They are microns through which the blood flows, and so blood filters across these things and goes into the. So the center is the hepatic vein, or the vein of the liver, and it comes from the artery and the portal vein. So blood comes from here, gets filtered through all of this and goes into the veins and goes there. So the liver cells will make the things that are required and put it into the blood and take away all the toxins and filter it out of there. That was the liver filter that was magnified about 1 billion times. So also the liver is designed to remove all the unhealthy cells. So in addition to all the toxins, all the chemicals, all the waste products, it also removes the unhealthy cells. So some of the dead cells, the debris, the cancer cells. Now, what are the cancer cells? They're not technically cancer cells, but all cells that undergo mutations. Now we are exposed to environmental radiations, chemicals, things like that, which damages the genes of the body, of the cells in the body, and these cells will, when they are filtered through the liver has what is called as a reticuloendothelial system, or a system of cells that removes all these bad cells also. So it is a part immune function also. It removes chemicals and drugs from the bloodstream. The medicines that we are given in the hospital, the medicines that we take as tablets, these are all chemicals. In addition, that we get exposed to a lot of chemicals that come through food and water and air and things like that. And all of these that are absorbed in the blood are filtered through the liver. The kidney only excretes the nitrogen waste, whereas the liver takes out all the other waste and all the harmful tissues. So these harmful things are called as toxins, the ones that are coming from the intestine. The intestine has a lot of bacteria. So there are good bacteria and there are bad bacteria. And these bad bacteria make what is called as endotoxins. And these endotoxins are probably instrumental for all the liver diseases and all the things that go bad in most of the body. Whereas the good bacteria are designed to keep everything functioning well. So probably everything regarding the liver health comes from keeping this bacteria healthy, and therefore the probiotics and things like that seem to be taking a center role these days. So toxins coming from the intestine are removed by the liver also. And then there is metabolic growth. So metabolic growth is all the metabolism, the carbohydrate metabolism, the fat metabolism, the protein metabolism. So all the things that we eat, it gets broken down to its basic fragments like amino acids and sugars and fatty acids. And all of these are broken down in the intestines. From the intestine, it gets absorbed into the blood, and the blood then eventually first it goes to the liver. Then the liver takes these building blocks and then makes the various energy substrates, the glycogen, the proteins, and everything that is required by the body to function. And then it supplies the body as the blood exits the liver. Now, detoxification. This detoxification is the removal of toxins. That is the term used for removal of toxins, detoxification. So most of the toxins that are present in the body are in two forms. They are either fat soluble or they are water soluble. The water soluble ones are very easily excreted by the kidney and they're generally not very effective. But the fat soluble ones are the ones that stay in the body, because the body has a large store of fat. So all the adipose tissue, all the fatty tissue in the body, it's all the muscle fat, all the skin fat, all the intestinal fat, all of that can store a lot of chemicals with the fat dissolved. And these fat soluble toxins are the only ones that are probably damaging to the human body. So they call what the fat soluble chemicals, the pesticides, the chemicals, the toxins, the pesticides we use at home, the paints, the cements, and all these are carcinogenic. Carcinogenic means they can cause cancer. And the liver is very, very instrumental in making sure that these things are removed from the body. And therefore, a healthy liver reduces the risk of anybody getting a cancer. It reduces the risk. I would say it takes away the risk, it reduces the risk. So now this is a little more in detail, probably not required for the common human being, more for a scientific understanding of things. So toxins that are fat soluble, they come in the circulation. So if there's a constant exchange between what's in the fat and what's in the blood, and there's a constant turnover. This happens. The constant exchange, like a solvent and a solute. there's constant exchange between the blood and the fat, and so vitamins and trace elements or or trace metals like and amino acids. These are all required for the detoxification or converting the toxins into harmless waste and excrete from the body. And this excretion happens through the bile, the kidneys, and the skin. The skin is sweat, bile goes into the intestine, and the kidneys take the urine. The kidneys remove all the water-soluble vitamins, the toxins, and the liver removes predominantly about 80% of the toxins in the body. And if you can see out here, what we see, there's a lot of vitamins and there's a lot of trace metals and elements. These are all antioxidants. And these antioxidants are therefore important for us. And this is what come from food, and these are instrumental in keeping our liver healthy. So as you can see, vitamins, antioxidants, glutathione, carotenoids, vitamin E, and therefore the role of salads and fruits is much important in the health of the liver. How do you check whether you're okay or not okay? The first thing that you can probably see is who has a chance of having liver disease. Now, everybody walking around has a liver. All the liver is a huge organ. It's kind of very robust. So it's about 1.5 kilograms. It's in the right upper side of the abdomen, just below the rib cage. It's quite huge, and it has a very big reserve. So in the sense that normally functioning, about 30% of the liver has enough capacity to fulfill the requirements of the body. And therefore, liver damage, if it happens, may tend to go unnoticed because it does not cause any symptoms unless a lot of liver gets damaged. So in fact, it is said that people who get jaundice or yellowing of the eyes is called as jaundice. That will happen only when the liver function is reduced by more than 60 to 70%. And you can imagine what kind of damage is required for the liver to cause any symptoms. And so a lot of people go through life getting long-standing, ongoing liver damage tends to happen and then we don't notice, and eventually one day we come to know that the liver is more than 50-60% damage, and then we worry, how come this happened? And then because the liver is a big organ with a lot of reserve. So what are the early signs and signatures that you can see, okay, now we need to look whether the liver is doing okay or not. So there's a role of fat. Most of us will have a central obesity where we store fat is around the abdomen, which is around the waist. If you have, the typical central obesity. Central obesity is people with insulin resistance and diabetes and things like that, where the fat tends to get accumulated around the level of the belly button, or just above the belly button, and that's called the liver roll. So roll of fat around the upper abdomen, just like a second tire is what you can call it. And that is a sign that, okay, this is the unhealthy fat, and therefore the chances of fatty liver and liver disease is probably high. So abdominal bloating and congestion. Now this abdominal bloating and congestion is very common in most people. Then when does it become pathological? When does it become a problematic? So the distinction of that is if it is because of fluid or because of water, then there are only 3 reasons why there can be water in the abdomen. There can be liver problems, kidney problems, or heart problems. 90% of them are liver problems. The other times when you can get water in the abdomen, and then when there is a cancer or an infection and things like that, but those are sufficiently rare. The symptoms are different. So if you get bloating and congestion because of water, then that is a sure sign of liver disease. Pain around the liver. Pain is very uncommon in liver conditions. The liver, because it is a big organ, unless there is a lot of swelling, only then you will get pain. But otherwise, liver failure causes no pain whatsoever. You may have liver cirrhosis or progressive damage of the liver needing liver transplant and have no pain whatsoever. Now, fatty yellowish lumps in the skin. Now, you see a lot of people with like pearly white or yellowish droplets under the eyelids and around the eyes and things like that. These are cholesterol deposits. Now, these are signs of fat overload. So that there possibly may be fat overload in the liver also that causes fatty liver. The liver is a storehouse of glycogen or a godown. So in between meals, when we are fasting, is the time when the liver provides calories to the rest of the body to keep on working. If the liver is diseased, then this calorie supply is hampered. So we get fatigue, we get tiredness, and that is one of the early symptoms of liver disease. Now, temperature regulation, overheating and excessive sweating. This is a part of temperature regulation. Now, temperature regulation is when the liver cannot store enough glycogen, then all the calories out in the circulation are metabolized and they cause increase in heat generation, and that causes excessive sweating and overheating. Or in terms of cold, when the liver is supposed to supply excess calories and the liver can't provide the calories, therefore the body gets cold. So temperature regulation getting affected is one of the early signs of liver disease. And patients with diabetes and blood pressure, if the sugars have been uncontrolled for a long period of time, if the blood pressure has been controlled for a long period of time, and suddenly the sugars start getting low or start getting very well controlled, and the blood pressure start getting very well controlled, then the liver needs to be checked. So these are some of the very early signs. These are some pictures that tell us what happened. Now, this is what I'll talk about, the fat deposits in the skin. These are called as xanthelasma. Very uncommon, but if they are seen, there are short sign of very high cholesterol and fat in the liver. This is called a jaundice. Now, the yellowing of the eyes. The bilirubin in the blood gets deposited in the eyes, and that causes yellowing, and that is called as jaundice or icterus. You can see this white ring around the eye. That is called as a liver ring. This happens in some metabolic or atherosclerosis, so age-related cholesterol deposits in the blood vessels. It's called as arcus senilis or arcus hepatis. And this is a picture where there is water in the abdomen. So this is bloating. This, when there is liver cirrhosis, the patient will develop water in the abdomen. That is called as ascites. And this ascites is seen like this. Now, all these are probably signs of late liver. So these two are signs of late liver disease, and these two are signs of early liver disease. As a human being, are we more prone to liver problems? Do we have more susceptibility to liver problems? So what are the reasons why we should think of, no, my liver is something that I need to look after more frequently because of this issue. So if I have multiple skin sensitivities or multiple tolerances, multiple foods that I cannot tolerate, multiple intestinal infections, the chances of liver disease become high. Multiple skin problems like allergic problems like skin rashes and liver spots and freckles and xanthelasma, all these things mean you're having a liver disease much higher. Gallstones and gallbladder stones. So if someone has had gallbladder stones, gallbladder stones usually are cholesterol stones. So extra cholesterol is deposited in bile and that precipitates as cholesterol, and that causes stones. People who have gallbladder stones have a higher risk of getting liver disease. Anyone who has high cholesterol is obviously at a very high risk for getting fatty liver. Someone who suddenly become moody or suddenly become depressed or foggy brain or does not seem to be functioning very normally mentally is probably so this is a sudden change. It's a noticeable change that happens suddenly, and then we say, okay, the liver needs to be checked. Again, itchy or red eyes is a sign of allergy, and allergic people have a higher chance of getting allergic liver damage or autoimmune liver damage. And last but not the least, unexplained weight loss or inability to lose weight. What are some of the unusual signs that portend liver disease? One is allergies, chemical sensitivity, swollen glands. So like tonsils and lymph nodes you get in the axilla, in the groins, in the neck. These are signs of infections and inflammations. Recurrent infections, chronic fatigue, pains, some autoimmune disorders like skin rashes and arthritis and things like that. But the most common symptoms are fatigue or tiredness, jaundice or yellowing of the eyes. Now, swelling of the feet. Unfortunately, I could not find a good picture to post for swelling of the feet, but swelling of the feet is a very good sign, a very early sign of albumin. The swelling of the feet is related to when the liver does not make enough albumin. Then the albumin level, the albumin is a protein that is made by the liver, and if the liver does not make enough albumin, then because of that, the feet starts swelling. Now, easy bruising or easy bleeding. Someone you notice that, okay, I frequently bleed while brushing my teeth from my gums, or if I go to the lab to give blood tests, the blood does not seem to stop for some time. The clotting may be a problem. The clotting becomes a problem because the liver is the only organ that makes these proteins that are required for clotting. So easy bruising or easy bleeding may be another sign of early liver disease. We should normally check liver function tests always, even if they don't have any symptoms, is people who have done IV drug abuse, shared needles, athletes who use drugs and things like that. Very uncommon, but they're highest risk. That's why they come up first. People who are taking long-term medicines, especially lots of medicines at the same time, like lots of antibiotics or cholesterol medicines or blood pressure medicines or painkillers. People who have a family history of liver disease. Now, if there's liver disease in the family, the risk of getting liver disease again is much, much higher. So these number 2 and number 3 are the most common indications for checking your liver function test and issue for monitoring liver function tests. Alcohol intake, obviously, we all know that alcohol is toxic to the liver and alcohol can cause liver damage. So alcohol is generally considered as, if the regular alcohol intake is higher, then we should have a liver function check. High levels of inotropes, having tattoos, having blood transfusions, being diabetic, being overweight, and high alcohol intake and smoking, all these are basically are all unhealthy things. If you're doing something wrong, then yes, the liver, or if you have done something wrong and you recently corrected to good habits now, it's still worth checking the liver function test, because without checking, we will not know whether there is a problem or not. Commonest problem. What are the common problems that cause liver damage? So alcohol is one of the most common causes. About 30% of liver failure or liver cirrhosis or liver disease because of alcohol. Now, the biggest problem, what I say to most patients is, not everybody who drinks alcohol will get liver damage, but someone who is going to get liver damage will not know until you get the liver damage. So what happens is that of all the people who drink alcohol, about more than 80% will have no problems whatsoever. Only 20% will have some liver damage. But these 20% will look at the remaining 80%. We'll say that kuch nahi hota, peete hai aur marte hai. So they keep drinking and they get sick. They keep drinking and they get sick. So that's why this year, in fact, not this year, last year, the WHO put it onto the list that any amount of alcohol can be harmful to health. So that belief that alcohol is a small degree of alcohol is good for the heart is not correct. It is rubbish. No amount of alcohol is good for whatsoever. It is only carbohydrate, and any amount of alcohol can be damaging. It is not that it will be damaging, it can be damaging, and we don't know when and what. So the normal liver tissue becomes replaced with unhealthy fats. So in fatty liver, and alcohol tends to contribute to fatty liver much highly. So after alcohol, fatty liver becomes the next common cause of liver disease. So alcohol is about 30%, fatty liver is another 30%. Then there are viral disorders, hepatitis B, hepatitis C. Then there are metabolic problems like iron storage disorders, copper storage disorders, autoimmune liver problems. So they make up the remaining 10% of problems. Now, when do you get fatty liver? Why do we get fatty liver? So fatty liver is a serious epidemic. I mean, I don't remember the last time that I saw an ultrasound for any patient that said that the liver looks normal. It's always is a fatty liver, at least grade 1, but there is a fatty liver. So why do we get a fatty liver? You put something in the bank and you don't spend it, it's going to accumulate. And as I say to everybody, agar bank mein rakha hai, to interest bhi milega. So the bank gives you interest, and that fat in the liver is so the amount of calories that you consume versus the amount of calories that you spend. So if there is a discrepancy, these extra calories will be stored. Part of the calories are stored in the liver. The second thing that goes around is the timing of our food intake. Now, if you look at all our olden times of ancient people, sadhus and everyone, and even now to this day in Europe and the Western world, people tend to have an early dinner. Why? Now, our bodies make hormones in the morning at about sunrise. Whatever food you take at that time, whatever calories we eat at that time are the calories that this body can utilize. So all the anabolism, the bodybuilding, the repair, the healing, the injuries and everything is repaired at this time. And as the day progresses, these hormones get lesser and lesser. After 4 o'clock in the evening, there are no hormones available. So if you actually notice, whatever food you eat in the evening we find that it is heavy, it becomes a bit too much, we find it difficult to digest. But all said and done, the body still digests it, the body still assimilates it. But what to do? After digestion, the body can't use it. Factory is closed. Then what to do? Then we have to put it in the storeroom. Now, one of the big storerooms is the liver. So evening calorie intake is one of the things that contributes to storage, and that storage happens predominantly in the liver, and this is what contributes to a fatty liver. Now, unfortunately, all our parties and alcohol intakes and everything happen in the evening. But once in a while, it's okay. But generally, we should avoid evening calories. A big breakfast, a small lunch, a smaller dinner. And preferably, I generally say to people that have very little at dinner, have the dinner before 7:30, and do not sleep for at least 2 to 3 hours after your dinner. So the time that you're awake, you tend to spend those calories, consume those calories, and they don't need to be stored. So this fatty liver can be then either NAFLD or non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, or it converts to NASH. Now, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is when fat is only stored in the liver. When this fat is damaging to the liver and it causes inflammation, then that inflammation is called as hepatitis, and that is non-alcoholic steatohepatitis or hepatitis because of fat. What is hepatitis? And hepatitis is an inflammation of the liver. Any injury to the liver causes inflammation, and this inflammation is how do we know that there is inflammation? When the blood tests, the SGOT and SGPT in the blood get elevated, then we know that there is some ongoing liver damage, and this liver damage is representative of the hepatitis. So hepatitis can be because of alcohol. For alcoholic hepatitis, can be because of fat or fatty liver induced hepatitis called as NASH. It can be drug induced. Lots of medicines that we consume can have a side effect that causes hepatitis. A lot of the Ayurvedic, homeopathic, Unani, Chinese, herbal medicines, all of these are not studied. In fact, when I was doing my transplant fellowship, out of the 150-200 transplants we did in the year, about 13% of the transplants were for patients who had liver damage because of alternative branches of medicine. So the problem is that these alternative branches of medicine, we don't know what is safe and we don't know what is safe. And that is the bigger problem. For that matter, let's say, we all take Liv52 every now and then, once in a while, and things like that. But to date, there is no evidence that say that Liv52 does anything to the liver or makes anything better. And then there are infections like hepatitis A and hepatitis E, which are both waterborne or foodborne diseases, and this hepatitis B and hepatitis C. These are both bloodborne or injection-borne. So hepatitis A and hepatitis C are self-limiting illnesses. They normally get better by themselves. In a very small fraction of people, when the jaundice is so severe that the patient goes into a coma, then we say that it's called as fulminant liver failure, where the liver may not recover and may need an emergency transplant. But hepatitis A and E, more often than not, will recover spontaneously. Hepatitis B and C are viral disorders, viral infections that happen through either blood or through sexual contact, and they affect the liver over a long period of time. Fortunately, today we have good medicines for hepatitis B and hepatitis C, and we have vaccine for hepatitis B. We don't have a vaccine for hepatitis C yet, but our treatment of hepatitis C is much better, and we have medicines that can control hepatitis B, but we can't cure hepatitis B. So, in fact, after 1989, hepatitis B immunization is part of the national immunization program. So, a few pictures now. This on the left side is what the normal liver looks like. It's like dark brown. People who eat non-vegetarian food will identify with what a liver looks like. And this yellow-looking, white-looking liver is full of fat. So this is a fatty liver. The normal liver is then. So after the liver gets liver cirrhosis. Now, what is liver cirrhosis? Is scarring of the liver, permanent scarring of the liver that causes the liver to shrink and become nodular. So this is what a cirrhotic liver looks like. So when we come to the basic point of today's talk, is how to keep the liver healthy. A very few things that we can do. Do we need, the first question, do we need supplements? Fortunately, no. Unfortunately, everybody out there is out to swindle you and make money out of selling you liver supplements. And There is nothing that any liver supplement can do. The liver has a very good capacity to regenerate itself, to detoxify, to cure the toxins. All that we have to do is to provide it the right environment, the right amount of raw material, the right amount of antioxidants, vitamins, trace metals, all the good foods. So increase intake of raw fruits and vegetables, so salads and fruits, and they provide us with antioxidants, they provide us with fiber. So what does the fiber do? The good thing about fiber is that fiber is helpful for keeping your bowels healthy and keeping your intestines functioning normally. But also the good thing about fiber is the fiber tends to absorb all the toxins in the intestine, all the bad things in the intestine. They stick to fiber and they go away in the stool, and the liver gets rarely exposed to them. Whatever the liver gets exposed to, the liver can handle. But if you don't make it work too much, then the liver function much better. Water intake and juices, all fluids will dilute all the toxins. So the more dilute the toxins are, the easier they are to take care of. Fatty foods. Now there is good fat and there is bad fat. Fortunately, we have come to the understanding now, or rather probably we think it's fortunate, things may change in the future, but now we know that fat is not bad. We know that carbohydrates are the problem, but fat is not bad. So we say fried food is not the problem. What gets fried is the problem. So if we have fish that is fried or paneer that is fried, then that is perfectly fine. But if a samosa gets fried, then the samosa is only maida and aloo, and it's only carbohydrates. So the samosa is bad, but the fish is not bad. So per se, the oil itself is not bad. It is the carbohydrate that is bad. So fatty foods are good. Carbohydrates are bad. Unfortunately, exercise is required. Without exercise, nothing works. So we all should have at least 20 minutes of exercise every day. So there is a saying that 10,000 steps a day. There is no basis to all of that, but that at least has got people to moving 10,000 steps a day at least. But exercise always helps. Use the calories. The less calories we have, the less is stored. If the less is stored, less fatty liver. So that makes good for the liver. Timing of food intake, as I said, mornings are the best time to take food. Evenings are not a good time to eat food. Unfortunately, all parties are in the evening. So once in a while, we can party, but every day should not be a party. Avoid processed food. Now, what is processed food? So, maida. Maida is the single common denominator in all processed food. So anything that is made of maida is bad. Biscuits are poison. Biscuits should technically be banned. Even for that matter, cornflakes. Now, Kellogg's probably ran the most successful advertisement campaign in the history of the universe. But cornflakes do contain about 86% carbohydrates, which is not necessarily good for the human body. Our bodies, as human beings have evolved, we have changed from hunters, gatherers, farm workers to more desk sitters and office goers. So we don't have a lot of physical activities. People who do physical activities can spend the carbohydrates. People who don't have physical activity, the carbohydrates will be converted to fat and they will be stored. So the cholesterol that is there in the body is not absorbed from the fat that we eat. It is made by the body from the extra carbohydrates that we have. And the last but not the least is calorie intake balance. So if you put more in the bank and spend less, you will get interest and you will be rich. But we don't want to be rich in fact. So that is the bottom line of that. The few dictums to be followed is one or two of them. Be careful with what medication you take. So most medicines that we take are broken down by the liver to the metabolites. Some of these are used for the body, useful to the body, but a lot of them can be harmful. The liver has about 300 different mechanisms of detoxifying all the toxins, and all medicines are some kind of toxin. So don't take medicines at the drop of a hat. Ayurvedic homeopathic medicines, 40 plus and 50 plus, these are absolutely hokum. There's no evidence that any of them do any good to anybody. Things like cod liver oil and fish sea oil and fish oil capsules and 7 seas oil, the amount of fat or vitamin E that they have, the amount of essential fatty acids that they have is too negligible for that to be useful to the human body. So we'll have to have a bottle of, rather we'll have to have a lot of those medicines to have any benefit. If we have a normal balanced diet, all these medicines and supplements are not at all required. So what I say to most people is that avoid medicines when you don't need them. Avoid medicines that have no evidence. Talk to your doctor before you take any medicine, whether it is required or it's not required. Eat the right foods. So reduce your carbohydrate intake, increase your protein and fiber intake. Proteins are generally good for the liver and fiber is good for everything. Exercise a little bit every day and eat at least one fruit every day. Follow a balanced diet. A general balanced diet is going to give you enough proteins, enough carbohydrates, enough antioxidants, enough fiber. What are the liver healthy things that you can consume? So peppermint tea, dandelion tea, black coffee, these are supposed to be good for the liver. Green tea, antioxidant, green tea, herbal tea, all these have antioxidant properties and is good for the liver. Raw vegetable juices, salads, homemade lemonade, they contain a lot of vitamin C and vitamin E, and that is all good for the liver. But the problem is nothing will work unless we exercise and take care of everything else. So you can't have 4 samosas every day and have a cup of green tea and say that I'm going to be okay. Protein is good. All protein is good for the liver. So eggs, poultry, lean fresh meats, processed meats like sardines and salamis and ham and bacon. They are not, so that should be had in moderation, but other meats are no problem. Other meats are okay. Dairy products are all good for you. Nuts and especially dry fruits, they contain a lot of vitamin E, a lot of antioxidants, and they're definitely good for you. Some fats are healthy. Olive oil, linseed oil, coconut oil, eggs, fish oil supplements, flaxseed supplements, avocados, fruit fats. These are all generally good fats. Several natural, these are things that have no evidence, but anecdotally they have said to be good for the liver. But when you take them alone, so you can't have a clove of garlic every day and think that everything is going to be fine. So in balance, these are the more balancing out foods. They are the more helpful foods. So garlic, citrus fruit, vegetables, turmeric, walnuts, beetroots, carrots, green teas, apples, avocados, they're supposed to have a good effect on the liver. In general, good food, exercise, and plenty of fluids, and avoid alcohols and toxins that will damage the liver. And after the age of 40, we should have our first liver checkup. At the age of 40, we should have an ultrasound, LFT is done and everything done. If everything is normal, then we can repeat it every 3 years until the age of 55. And after that, we should do it every year. If you find it abnormal, then you should do it every 6 months until it is normal, and then repeat it every 3 yearly until it is until 55, and after that every year. So that is more or less. Basically, it's not very difficult. It's all just basic common sense. Do the healthy things, do the right things, eat good food, exercise, and you will almost certainly be quite healthy with the liver. So I will be happy to take any question. Now let me look. I'm just looking at the questions from here in the chat box. So can Wilson's disease be treated with a liver transplant? Yes. Now Wilson's disease is something that is a copper storage disorder. Copper storage is it's a genetic problem, an inherent problem that comes with the genes. The earlier you identify it, there are medicines to control and treat Wilson's disease. But if the identification is late, then copper accumulates in the body, and this copper can damage the liver. Once the liver is damaged, then a liver transplant can be done. And once the liver transplant is done, the patient no longer has Wilson's, even the Wilson's is cured. But if there is no liver failure and there is only Wilson's disease, then a liver transplant is not required. Only medicine should be enough. So how do we come to know that there is some problem with the liver? So do we need to take a liver profile, which was SGPT total? So normally, most of the times you will not have any symptoms until a lot of the liver is damaged. So we can't wait for symptoms to happen until you test. But before then, if you want to test, as I said, if there are symptoms, you should test. If there are no symptoms whatsoever, then at the age of 40, you should do your first liver function tests and ultrasound. If there is a problem after that, then we should be able to treat it depending on what the liver function shows. So autoimmune hepatitis, can you discuss autoimmune? So autoimmune hepatitis, basically what is autoimmune hepatitis? Our own body has an immunity. Autoimmune means our antibodies. The antibodies are made by the body, damage our own body. So they can attack if these antibodies attack our own liver, then you get what is called as autoimmune hepatitis. Or autoimmune can be different parts of the body. There can be autoimmune thyroiditis, there can be autoimmune nephritis, there can be autoimmune myositis. So if it attacks the liver, then it is autoimmune hepatitis. This is generally a metabolic problem. Most of the time, it can be easily controlled with medicines alone. Normally, patients will be on 2 to 3 medicines to start with, but as the liver functions normalize, as the LFTs normalize, the medicines will come down. We're down to just 1 tablet. But a lot of these people eventually end up with liver damage, and about 30% of them will need a liver transplant. But yes, a liver transplant can cure autoimmune cirrhosis, and it is a valid option. But autoimmune hepatitis does not always need a transplant. Most of the times, medicines will be able to take care of that. So what are the tests to determine the conditions of the liver? So a few things. So liver function tests in all laboratory panels, we say LFTs. So liver function tests are something that is tell you what the liver is doing. So the SGOT and SGPT are markers of liver damage, whereas the serum bilirubin is a marker of excretory function, whereas the serum albumin and the PT-INR or the prothrombin time is a marker of the synthetic function of the liver. When you go to any laboratory, the laboratory will be able to guide us accordingly. Cholesterol synthesis happens in the liver. So if we have a high cholesterol, that means the liver is functioning well. If the cholesterol starts going down, if the liver is cirrhotic, then the cholesterol does start going down because the liver is not working normally. Even the kidney function. So these are a complex scheme of things. Even the kidney function test, the blood urea nitrogen. Urea is synthesized by the liver. If the urea is low, then the kidney function, the liver function may not be completely normal. But then these are not direct markers. So normally what we rely on is serum bilirubin, SGOT, SGPT, serum albumin, and INR. Does 10,000 steps a day help lose calories? No evidence, but it is better than nothing. So if people don't do anything and you do 10,000 steps, then 10,000 steps is better than nothing. Probably this 10,000 steps started as a marketing gimmick from the makers of Fitbit. So people started counting the steps on the Fitbit, and then it helped them sell their Fitbit and things like that. But yes, look at 10,000 steps is not a lot. Normally anyone would do 10,000 steps, but 10,000 steps is better than doing nothing. It won't help you lose weight. Okay, from patients with cardiac condition or diabetic patients with high blood pressure have taken medicines for almost the whole life. How does it affect the liver? So most of the time, diabetic medicines and blood pressure medicines are safe for the liver. But yes, people who have to take medicines for almost all their life for diabetes and blood pressure, your doctor will almost always do liver function tests at least once a year. And these liver function tests will tell us early if there is any ongoing damage or any injury to the liver because of that. Most of the times, patients with diabetes and blood pressure will have fatty liver and what is called as cryptogenic liver problems or NASH. And the problems with the liver are usually not related to the medicine, but to the inherent nature of the problem. For AIH patients or autoimmune hepatitis patients, how long are the steroids to be continued, and do they reduce the immunity, particularly in these pandemic times? For patients with autoimmune hepatitis, most of the time we would start the patient on steroids, but over a period of between 3 to 6 months, we taper the steroid, we stop the steroids, and we put the patients on what is called as either azathioprine or mycophenolate. Azathioprine, the commonest drug, yes, it does reduce the immunity to a small extent. So all these patients should be counseled accordingly, and they should be told that they can't act like most normal people with a normal immunity. Like I can't go to the roadside and have a pani puri at the roadside. I need to be cautious when coming in contact with infected people. So all patients with immunosuppressive medicine have to follow this. These pandemic times, whether this pandemic, unfortunately with COVID-19, this is a new disease. We know it for less than 1.5 years. We don't understand anything about it. I mean, we had this, we have had HIV from almost, what, 35 odd years now, 40 years now, almost 41 years. And we still don't know everything about HIV. So COVID is just 1.5 years old. It's still a baby. And I was actually quite interested in the talk that you had about third wave and fourth wave and things like that. But these are all speculations. We don't know. Now, when do the waves stop? Then the number of people who can get infected is less than the waves will stop. So will the vaccines help? Hopefully, we don't know yet, but probably yes. I mean, what we've seen so far at this time, the second wave that we've seen is that people who got the vaccine have had COVID, but the COVID has been much milder. They haven't had any serious disease, they had severe problems. So just positive, stay at home, isolate, and get better. Most of the time, people who had COVID before, who have taken the vaccine, have not developed any severe illness. But COVID is something that we are still exploring. We still don't understand everything about it. Just today, I mean, the vaccines are big business. And just today in the newspaper, there is an article, I think it is the Times of India, that boosters will be required. We don't know how much, we don't know when. So it all depends on the finances of the making company, probably. If the company wants money, they'll ask us to take a booster after 6 months, or they'll say after 1 year or 5 years. And but yes, taking the vaccine does help, and we all should take the vaccine. Can the Ayurvedic herb Giloy and excellent medicine for improvement be taken in autoimmune hepatitis? So autoimmune hepatitis is something that is when the immunity is too powerful. So you really don't want to increase your immunity. You want to keep the immunity a little less. So any immunity boosters will probably not be useful in patients with autoimmune hepatitis. Besides, as I said about Ayurvedic medicines and Unani medicines, in 2018, August, there was a big study from Hyderabad. And so I'm not an expert at Ayurvedic medicines or homeopathic medicines or Unani medicines, but what is commercially available, what people are selling these days. So these medicines were taken. There were about 380 samples they took from all across Hyderabad and South India. They tested these. About 83.7% of these samples had steroids or heavy metals and toxins. And when I worked at my liver transplant center during my training, we saw about 10 to 13% patients coming from liver damage because of this alternative medicines. So we have to be very careful about selecting what alternative medicines to take. I don't think there is anybody, but the bigger problem with alternative medicines that they may not damage the liver, but they make a patient feel, someone who already has liver disease, then they think, oh, I'm taking Ayurvedic medicine, it's going to get better. But it may not get better, and we don't know what's happening. And more liver damage tends to happen. And we come to know at a much later date. So the patient has lost precious time because of this medicine. Okay, now someone has asked me to show some exercises for keeping the liver healthy. Any exercise, what is exercise? Exercise is when your heart rate is double. So when you feel that you have exercise, a walk in the park is not equal to exercise. A walk in the park is not equal, daily evening walks, daily morning walks is not equal to exercise. So a walk in the park is not equal to exercise. If you're going to just walk, then it has to be a brisk walk. We have to get breathless. Your heart rate has to double. Now, someone asked the question, what is fatty liver and what medicine to take? And I just explained a little while ago. Fatty liver is more fat in the liver and there is no medicine. All medicines will help with fatty liver, but exercise and calorie control is all that is next. Okay, from Raghu's, I am 80 with eyes sagging and fat around there. Due to sitting, feet swelling comes. So then if we have these symptoms, then we should get tested. The idea of getting testing is we need to find out whether there is a serious liver problem or there is no serious liver problem. If there is no serious liver problem, then we can continue doing what we are doing. Increase your exercise tolerance. People with cardiac conditions will find it difficult to exercise, so consult the cardiologist before exercising. I am having LDL higher, but I'm not taking atorvastatin because my doctor said it will affect the liver. Yes, all cholesterol lowering medicines can affect the liver, but if we have to take it, we have to take it. It depends on what the level of LDL is. If it is more than twice the upper limit of normal, then yes, medicines are required. If there is not more than upper twice, the diet and exercise should be enough. G6PD deficiency. D6PD is not typically a liver disorder. It affects everything in the body, but it's out of the realm of liver disease. It is more of a general metabolic problem, but it does not cause any liver damage or particular liver problem per se. Does Viagra affect the liver? No, not that is known of, but no, the Viagra does not affect liver. Okay. Radha ma'am is asking, I take metformin, clopidogrel, ecosprin, statin, Telma, AM, Metocard. How much water should I take? Night I get up with dryness of the mouth. So normally we would say that if the heart function and the kidney function is normal, then summers we should aim for something like 3.5 liters of water, and winters we should aim for around 2 liters of water. If we are living in an AC or working in an AC environment, our water loss tend to be slightly higher. If we sweat a lot, our water loss tend to be slightly higher. If we are mouth breathers, if we snore, then our water losses tend to be slightly higher. Prolonged taking of medicines for diabetes, will it affect the liver? Yes, it will affect the liver in a good way. The higher the sugar levels, the more the chances of getting a fatty liver. So diabetic medicines will help control the sugar and therefore will reduce the chance of getting a fatty liver. Is the liver responsible for water absorption? If much water is absorbed, then one becomes flabbily fat. How to regulate the quantity of water intake? The body is very good at telling you if you are thirsty, then means you need water. If you're not thirsty, that means you don't need water. Again, habits tend to form over a period of time. If you are a regular water drinker, then you will tend to drink more water. If you're not a regular water drinker, you will not get. Water doesn't cause anyone to get fat. How to regulate the intake of water is heart disease and kidney disease are the only two problems when water intake needs to be regulated. If the kidneys are working fine, then water intake need not be regulated. Tiruveni ma'am, you wanted to ask something?
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, my husband had this swelling in the leg, but I was take him to several doctor. No doctor has actually referred to the liver specialist.
Correct.
No, they told us they had to take chest X-ray or something else regarding only the heart problem.
Right. So what happens? So I'll just tell you. Let me interrupt you there. Swelling of the feet is because of water not being effectively pumped out. So that means the problems can be three different. It can be a liver problem, it can be a heart problem, or it can be a kidney problem. So all three need to be checked. So the heart function, we do 2D echo for the heart and we find that the heart is not pumping enough, then simple heart failure may cause the swelling of the feet. But yes, a liver function test and an ultrasound of the liver is required.
Yeah, liver function, the SQOT, SGPT, that reference level little higher. It was actually in the 2004.
More importantly, what is the serum albumin level?
Okay. At that time, we didn't know. Actually, he is no more because of the doctors' the carelessness only. Because very late we found the problem in liver, hepatitis B, and that too very late. Because liver shows only the last stage only.
Correct. No,
and that's
not necessarily. See, when someone who has already has heart problems and kidney problems, so if there is a heart problem, it will affect the kidneys, it will affect the liver. If there's a liver problem, it will affect the kidneys, it will affect the heart. So it may not be that he had a liver problem from the beginning. He may have developed the liver problem secondary to the heart problem. And generally, it will be quite easy to pick up. If you have done any basic blood tests, they should have picked up the liver problem much earlier if it was early. This may have happened much later in life.
You may be right, but doctor, after heart problem, after kidney problem, you should have got this liver, you are telling. But we had checked everything.
Right.
Okay, it was quite all right. But because very late we found the hepatitis B, because of hepatitis B. Yeah.
Okay.
How he could get this hepatitis B? Through which?
Before 1989, when hepatitis B vaccination was mandatory, and in 1990 the government made it mandatory for everyone to use only disposable needles. So before that, people used needles that were boiled and reused. Just keep it in hot water and reuse. So that resulted in a lot of transmission of hepatitis B and hepatitis C. Like Burma and Mongolia. So in Burma and Mongolia, the hepatitis B positivity rate, so about 18% of the population and 20% of the population in Burma, so 18% in Burma and 20% in Mongolia is hepatitis B positive. Simply because of not using disposable needles, using reusable needles. Once the practice started, now hepatitis B transmission is much reduced, and now it is because of the vaccine, the incidence is going down.
But people are get vaccinated now. All.
If you have not been vaccinated for hepatitis B, then you should get vaccinated. Before going for a vaccine, they will test you for hepatitis B first. If you don't have hepatitis B, they will give you the vaccine.
So everyone should get.
Yes, we all should get, because we don't know when we can get it. Na?
Okay. Suppose if something happened in 10th at the age of 10, but this hepatitis B will show after 60 years.
It can. What happens is that hepatitis B is something. If 100 people get hepatitis B, about 80 to 85% of the people will clear the virus themselves and become immune to it. The remaining 10-15% will keep the virus. Now, amongst these people, another 20-15% will become will make friends with the virus and they become friends.
It will be hidden somewhere else.
Yes.
Sir, I want to ask.
Hello. And once at one fine day, suddenly when the body's immunity becomes better, then this virus can reactivate and cause.
Okay. Thank you, doctor. Just I want
to
know.
Please don't disturb. Don't disturb in the middle, please. Hello, please don't disturb in the middle. Thank you.
Hello, excuse me, ma'am. Can I speak? Hello, can I speak?
Who is this?
This is Urmila Lal.
Yes, ma'am, please.
Others also.
Urmila Lal, ma'am, you wanted to ask something, you raised a hand.
Sir, can I speak? Jai
Yes,
Shri Panchami.
Yes, please.
Sir, I got a liver, sluggish liver problem from childhood, and many allergies from plants also. That green plants, subjis I can't take. I feel very tired. I do exercise every day. But what about the food? I can't tolerate any of the food.
So so what do you mean by a sluggish liver problem?
That my uncle told me that it's slow.
So there is nothing like a sluggish liver problem. So what we should do, you should check your liver function tests and get an ultrasound done. If
Hello,
both of them are
doctor.
normal, then everything is fine.
Hello,
Okay, I will contact you, sir.
doctor.
Yes, tell
Doctor.
me. Yes, ma'am.
Can I speak to you?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Tell me.
You seem to be cutting me off at every time. Now, the thing is, I want to ask you, the liver tissue is a regenerative tissue. Is that right?
Correct.
Right. Now, there have been cases when parts of the liver have been taken off, infected parts of the liver have been taken off. Does the liver, do the liver cells regenerate? And if they do regenerate, if it is a diseased liver, if it is an infected liver, is that liver tissue, does it carry hereditarily the infection to the next host?
Now, what happens with when you're talking about liver regeneration? There are particular instances when the liver can regenerate. Like when you get hepatitis A or hepatitis E or waterborne hepatitis, the liver damage that is caused, that liver can regenerate and overcome this liver damage. But the long-standing liver damage that happens either because of alcohol or hepatitis B or hepatitis C or fatty liver, this cannot be this cannot be regenerated. So in this point, scarring does happen.
Scarring happens. Okay.
But yes, the liver can be a part of the liver can be removed. So there is something called as living donor liver transplants.
Right.
So what we do in living donor liver transplant, we take half the liver of the donor, we cut it out and we transplant it to the patient.
Yes.
Both these halves of the liver will go back to normal size in about 6 to 8 weeks time. So yes, this can grow in size. If
the liver is not taken from a cadaver in this.
Sorry?
Liver tissue is not taken from a cadaver.
Yes, in this a liver tissue not taken from a cadaver.
Yeah.
We can take liver tissue from a cadaver. There are two options. When you do a liver transplant, we can take it from a cadaver or we can take it from a living person. A living person has to be, by law, has to be from the family.
Yeah.
But it's possible to take it from a living person and the living person can donate.
What is the proportion that you can take out? Liver is a large organ.
We take up to 60%. We take up to 60% of the liver and donate it to the patient.
And the acceptance by the recipient. How do you know that he not inherit certain deficiencies which might be present from the donor?
We test the donor completely. We test the donor in detail before we do the operation.
Before you do the operation.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, doctor. Much enlightened. Thank you. Bye.
So some few questions. Are non-vegetarians more prone to liver ailments than vegetarians? No, that is not correct. Is hypothyroidism a cause of fatty liver? No. Hypothyroidism itself does not cause fatty liver. Hypothyroidism causes reduction in physical activity, and therefore physical activity is reduced, and therefore fatty liver is more common as that. On implanting the liver cells, do the cells multiply? So that was Dr. Urmila Lalman. Can yoga be taken as exercise? Probably no. Yoga is by definition, yoga is mental exercise. Yoga is for the brain, and when the brain, so the brain and the body function in such a way that they complement each other. So yoga, if you exercise the body and the brain does not get exercised, then it can be harmful. But modern yoga, power yoga, and these things, they improve your flexibility. Power yoga has some element of cardio exercise to it. So what yoga you are doing contributes to exercise, but just putting your body into various positions probably does not contribute to exercise. Can automatic initiate skin itching? Yes. This any kind of liver problem can cause skin itching because the bilirubin that increases can cause itching to happen. Unfortunately, this kind of itching is not very responsive to medicine. There are a very small number of medicines that can work, but treating the primary problem is the best cure for itching from these kind of from liver issues.
Can I ask a question, please?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I have been on
Drop the
methotrexate.
message.
Hello?
Please drop the message
Yeah.
to the chat box. Please drop the message to the chat box. Doctor address each and every queries of the member.
So the next question was, I was prescribed ezetimibe instead of atorvastatin since it didn't suit me. Does ezetimibe cause any effect on the liver? The end result of using ezetimibe versus atorvastatin is the same, or it is not same, I would say it's similar. So it doesn't affect the liver. Both these medicines are suited to change the metabolism of the liver to a less fatty metabolism, making less cholesterol. So reduction in the synthesis of cholesterol. Besides, ezetimibe is something that is helpful in reducing the fatty liver also. So it is safe. It is probably a better medicine than atorvastatin. Why do we not give ezetimibe first up? It's probably because it's a little more expensive and our knowledge of atorvastatin is far more as compared to our knowledge of ezetimibe. But no, there's nothing really much to choose between the two. Another question from Nagaraj. The problem of varicose veins, is it the result of liver malfunctioning? Can varicose veins be treated by suitable exercise? Unfortunately, varicose veins and liver has nothing to do with each other. Varicose veins are because of a different problem. Prolonged standing, poor valves, disease of the valves. These are the problems that can cause varicose veins. The liver problems do not cause varicose veins.
Doctor, are you listening me, doctor? Doctor, are you listening me?
Yes, please tell me, who is this?
I am Satyapal here.
Yeah, tell me.
Creatinine has gone high, 3.6. Is there any way to reduce it?
What is creatinine?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, creatinine is a marker of kidney function. Creatinine of 3.5 is very high.
Yeah.
So that very high. So how to reduce it is to improve the kidney function. How to improve the kidney function? Now, it depends on what kind of kidney damage there is. Is that permanent damage? Is that temporary damage? Is it because of diabetes? Is it because of medicines? Is it because of the liver problem? So many facets to that question. Though there is no question, there is no simple answer to can I improve the creatinine. You can improve the creatinine by undergoing dialysis, but that is not the answer. The answer is trying to find out what the problem is with the liver and treating that problem.
And the last week I have been, this angioplasty has been done.
Okay.
There are some blockage in the RSC.
Okay.
So what precautions should be taken for that?
If you've undergone angioplasty, then the medicine, the dye that they use for the angioplasty is the dye that can have caused some liver damage. Not liver, the kidney damage. The creatinine may have gone high because of the dye, because of the contrast. And so consult the doctor who has done the angiography and tell them that the creatinine is 3.5, and they can prescribe you medicines to help this kidney damage be recovered. Now, if the creatinine has been high from before, then the problem that has caused the high creatinine is different. And if it is because of diabetes, then a high creatinine means the kidney is not functioning normally. If the kidney is not functioning normally, then there are.
Of course, I am diabetic.
You're non-diabetic?
I am.
Yes. Okay. So then your diabetologist will tell you. So this is the diabetic nephropathy. So what's called diabetic kidney damage. Most patients, about 70% of patients with diabetic kidney damage do not need dialysis. But once the body does not make enough urine, if the potassium in the body starts going up, if the fluid in the body starts going up, you start getting swelling here and there, then dialysis may be required. The best solution to all of this is a kidney transplant. But the suitability and the requirement needs to be assessed before I can advise on that. Just on a simple one single report, we can't say that. So we will have to have a 24-hour urine collection, urinary albumin levels, we probably make the kidney biopsy, and then we will be able to answer that whether what can be done for the kidneys.
Okay, thank you.
So there's another question from Mr. Padmanabhan. LIV52 tablet, is it good for the liver? There is unfortunately no evidence to say that LIV52 tablets are good for the liver. If you give, so in fact, there was a study from Satara, very close to Pune, They had 300 patients on each side. So 300 patients with jaundice were given LIV52, and 300 patients without jaundice were given were not given LIV52. They found that in both the arms of the study, an equal number of patients had problems and an equal number of patients recovered equally rapidly. So there's no real difference between the two. So we don't have any good evidence to say that LIV52 is good for the liver. Next question from Mr. Shashi Taneja. Ms. Shashi Taneja, I am on methotrexate for the past 30 years. What extra precautions to protect the liver? Now, methotrexate is an immunosuppressant, and it normally used for cancer treatment, but a smaller dose can be used as an immunosuppressant. So it can be used for arthritis and things like that. So it reduces the immunity to a certain extent. What can it do to your liver? Yes, it can cause liver damage by causing liver fibrosis. So what can you do for it? Have lots of fruits and vegetables, routinely get a liver function test checked, and get an ultrasound of the liver at least every year.
Thank you, doctor.
Pleasure.
I'm taking it for rheumatoid arthritis.
Right. So I can imagine that's the commonest indication that we take for. The only thing that you need to do is have enough fruits and vegetables, have the adequate amount of exercise that is recommended, and people on methotrexate are usually prescribed a prophylactic dose of folic acid and multivitamins. So take them regularly. Get a liver function test checked every 6 months and an ultrasound every 1 year.
Thank you.
Pleasure. As I think that's the end of questions. Thank you so much.
Where is your clinic?
Doctor, thank you. It was a wonderful talk by you, Doctor. It was very helping. You know, I was very interestingly listening to throughout your session. Wonderful, Doctor. Thank you so much.
Can I speak to you, doctor?
Yes,
Can I
please.
speak? I'm 86 years old,
Fantastic.
and is there any way that I can? I don't know about these tests, etc. But
Right.
as a what shall I say? As a housewife, as a normal woman with not too many troubles, can I? Is there any symptom that will lead me to a doctor for things? Is there any symptoms to a normal person?
I don't think so. See, but let us assume that you've gotten to the age of 86 without any major problems with the liver. So
Yeah.
if there were going to be any problems with the liver, by this time they would have become apparent. We would have known something about them.
Okay.
If you haven't needed anything until now, it's very, very unlikely that you would require anything in the
Yeah.
future.
And the type of diet you have prescribed, I think that is important, and exercise is important.
I would say it is important, but I think it's also okay to pamper yourself a little. So you can eat whenever you feel like. Oh, the occasional pampering of yourself is okay.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
No problem.
Sir,
Doctor, can I
where is
talk to
your
you?
clinic?
Yes,
Where is
please.
your clinic?
I work
Hello.
out of Columbia Asia and at Inamdar Hospital. I mean, at Inamdar Hospital, I'm in the morning, and I'm in Columbia Asia after 12 o'clock.
Hello, doctor.
Yes.
You said the fried things are not good, samosa, etc. All.
Fried things are not good. What gets fried is a problem. So fried food is fine. The oil, so ghee, butter, cheese, cream, everything is fine. It is the carbohydrates are the problem. So as I
Samosa
said,
is not good.
samosa is only carbohydrates, whereas fish
Yeah, right.
is protein. So
Okay.
that is the difference.
Right.
Hello, doctor. Hello.
Yes.
How vada? Vada is also same as the samosa.
Yeah.
I would say that vada is slightly better than samosa because vada does not have maida. Vada has besan. Besan has at least some amount of protein in it.
Hello, doctor. Can I speak?
Yes, please.
I'm having the glands under the skin, and they say that it is neurofibroma. I'm 82 years old.
Okay.
Not much any problem. So does it related to liver?
No, not at all. Not at all. You can, if the neurofibroma is not causing you any problem, you can safely ignore them and tell them to go to rest.
Thank you, doctor.
Pleasure.
Ask your question. Hello?
I can't hear anybody.
Thank you very much, sir. And it was such a wonderful session. I
Thank you.
was kept awake throughout the session without even missing one line of yours.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Hello, Doctor.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Doctor.
Kiran, you want to take over and conclude?
Yeah, GK Subramaniam, over to you, please.
Thank you
Unmute
very
your-
much, Dr. Harshal. It has been a wonderful talk, and throughout it has been very, very interesting. And every slide you showed has got a lot of wealth of information, which I think I have never attended a lecture like this before, in which each slide conveys a lot of information, and we generally are quite ignorant about the liver functions. And all that explanation that you had given right from beginning and answering all the questions asked by all of us very patiently, it has been a wonderful experience for all of us. Thanks a lot for
Pleasure.
devoting your time and giving us all the information. And I would request you to share your this phone number as well as the
I'll type my phone number in the chat box.
in the chat box along
Yeah.
with your where you're actually having your
Clinic.
center clinic.
So I work out of Columbia Asia and Inamdar Hospital predominantly. I am available at most hospitals in Pune for otherwise treatments. I am at Inamdar Hospital between 8:30 and 10:30 in the morning, and I come to Columbia Asia between 12 to 4 in the afternoon. There are other times that I'm operating. I do an online consulting in the evening after 10 o'clock at night.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's very
Dr.
Request
Dr.
Shashi ji to
Kiran here.
please give
As the
vote of
official
thanks.
process, I request Shashi Pardi, please give a vote of thanks.
Thank you, Kiran. Doctor, that was a really most amazing, interesting and informative talk.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
You are muted, Shashi. Please.
Okay. So it was a very interesting and informative talk. And in a simple layman's language, you told us how important is liver health. And we must remember that by just being little mindful, following simple guidelines and simple diet changes, I'm sure we can preserve our liver for a long time and remain healthy. Thank you so much. And I'm sure all of us have benefited tremendously from this talk. It was really awesome and very, very informative. Thank you so much.
Thank you, doctor. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, doctor.